bobbing in the Pacific following a bullseye touchdown that occurred at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time, 2.5 hours before sunset in the Pacific southwest of San Diego. We have once again heard from the crew during that interview opportunity with the administrator, and we have 4 healthy crew members on board. We now have confirmation that the vehicle has been powered down as per the procedures. So we have vehicle powered down, and the flight control team here in Houston, Flight Director Rick Henfling, has handed over mission authority to the Exploration Ground Systems team out in the Pacific. Now, we will physically not get off console with this team until the crew has been extracted into the front porch, that inflatable raft that will be erected along the side hatch of Integrity. So we're standing by for that in the next step in the recovery procedures. But everything is in great shape, and we have 4 healthy crew members on board the vehicle. All of the entry events went by the book, no issues, perfect trajectory for Integrity that was culminated with one final raise burn to improve the angle of attack for the vehicle as it entered the Earth's atmosphere. All of that flight dynamics computation worked like a charm. So we are standing by for the recovery team to approach Integrity and begin the process of erecting that inflatable raft called the front porch, which will see the crew members be extracted from the hatch of Orion into that inflatable raft before they're hoisted aboard 2 Navy helicopters in a variety of different configurations. Each crew member will be hoisted in sequential fashion, in alternating fashion, 2 crew members for each helicopter before they turn around to head back to the John P. Murtha. Once on the deck of the ship, they'll be brought into medical bay for comprehensive medical exams. But Reed Wiseman has reported several times that the crew is in excellent shape. So just to recap, it has been some 26.5 minutes since the splashdown of Integrity in the Pacific. The vehicle is in excellent shape. It performed like a champ all the way down through the Earth's atmosphere. All of the vehicle functions were checked off in excellent trip hammer fashion. The parachutes all deployed as planned. Splashdown occurring at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time. And after a bit of a tussle to try to establish a communications link with the recovery team, we were finally able to run through the procedures for the powering down of the vehicle. We've handed over mission authority to the Exploration Ground Systems folks out in the Pacific, and the recovery team will be approaching the vehicle shortly to erect the inflatable raft called the front porch before opening the hatch to Integrity to bring the crew members onto that raft before they're hoisted onto two Navy helicopters, two crew members for each helicopter, before they're flown back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. This is Mission Control Houston. After talking to the flight dynamics folks, we have a bit of a refinement on the splashdown time for you. Their computation shows a splashdown time of 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time, 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. That would equate to a mission elapsed time of 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 15 seconds. Once again, from Flight Dynamics, a splashdown time of 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. That would equate to a mission elapsed time of 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 15 seconds. Reports from the Pacific indicate that the recovery team, in communications with the crew aboard Integrity, that the crew remains in excellent shape as they await the approach of the team for a final hazard gas evaluation before they move to the side of the vehicle to erect the inflatable life raft called the front porch. Again, no issues with integrity. The vehicle is powered down. All of its systems are now safed. We have handed over mission authority to the Exploration Ground Systems folks in the Pacific, but we will not stand down and have the entry flight control team depart its positions until that inflatable raft, the front porch, is erected, the hatch open, and the crew having exited the vehicle. So that's the next step in the recovery process that will lead to the hoisting of the crew members. For 2 crew members for each helicopter, they'll be hoisted to a pair of Navy helicopters that will then fly a short distance back to the USS John P. Murtha. What you're looking at is one of the fast boats circling the vehicle to make a hazard assessment. This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, you're watching the initiation of the recovery of the Artemis crew aboard Integrity. All of the Navy divers and the fast boats are now approaching the spacecraft after conducting a hazard assessment. The vehicle has been powered down. Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling now waiting for the life raft, the front porch, to be erected along the side of the vehicle so that the hatch can be opened and the crew members extracted from Integrity, soon to be hoisted one by one into a pair of Navy helicopters for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. If you missed it earlier, we talked to Flight Dynamics and received a more official touchdown time or splashdown time, as it were, of 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time, 5:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Pacific Time. That would equate to a mission elapsed time of 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 15 seconds. Continuing to get excellent views from the imagery assets out at sea in the Pacific of integrity. We continue to get good reports from the landing and support officer who's in contact with the recovery team that the crew is in excellent shape, no issues. They're just currently biding their time, waiting for the front porch to be erected. We have no hazardous hazard gases and no hazardous situation with the vehicle. It performed perfectly all the way down from entry interface to its splashdown in the Pacific at 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. And as you can see, the first phalanx of recovery personnel now pulling up alongside of integrity. This includes Navy divers, a Navy flight surgeon, and other recovery personnel who have trained for several years for this recovery process. At this hour, some 41 minutes following splashdown, the vehicle has been powered down. There's no hazardous gas emanating from the vehicle. That's why the first team of recovery personnel has been able to pull alongside integrity. And the reports continue to come in that the 4 astronauts are in excellent shape. Yes. This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to watch the initiation of the recovery of Integrity's astronauts. One by one, they'll be brought out of the spacecraft onto a large inflatable raft just a short time from now. In the meantime, we can go back to the USS John P. Murtha, where my colleague Megan Cruz is standing by to provide her situation report. Megan, can you hear us?
Hey, Rob. Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Yeah, we're back here on the bow of the recovery ship where there are still plenty of people peering out into the water. We are not very far from the action everyone is seeing on their screen now. The Orion spacecraft, Integrity, in the ocean, surrounded by a number of recovery boats. As Rob has been saying, in those recovery boats, NASA and Navy personnel specifically trained to get the astronauts out of Orion. In some of our wide shots, you can probably see that there are 6 boats out in the water. More than 40 people out in the water right now on those boats. First order of business is to set up the front porch and the stabilization collar. You might also hear it referred to as a stab collar. Basically just to make sure that Orion stays upright, doesn't sway in the water too much, again, to make it easier for recovery forces to get the astronauts out. Again, we splashed down in the Pacific Ocean just after 5 p.m. Pacific time here. It's a requirement by NASA to be able to get the crew out of Orion within 2 hours of splashdown. So doing great on time so far. Plenty of time. No rush either. I was speaking to NASA flight surgeon Rick Schuring earlier in this broadcast, and he said to me, no rush to get the crew out. Just want to make sure that they're feeling good. And whenever they're ready to take their step out of Orion and onto that large raft, the front porch, and as there are mission audio loops in Mission Control in Houston, there is a mission audio loop here on the ship, and it was just reported out that the side hatch is open. Side hatch of integrity is open. You're getting these beautiful shots from our aerial assets. The ship itself, where I'm on, just 3,000 yards away. Again, plenty of people on the boat here, glued to the side closest to where they can see all this action. And again, with just 3,000 yards separating us, great views from the bow here. You can see now that side hatch is open. One of the Navy personnel is about to get inside there. In they go. In total, 4 will go into Orion. So it'll be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but the goal is to have a recovery personnel with each astronaut assessing them. Boats getting closer now. Again, that one that's right up against Orion, those are the divers that will go in to the spacecraft to check on each of the astronauts. These other boats will begin doing a number of things, putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion, building that front porch. Eventually, they will retrieve the parachutes, as well as tow Orion back to the well deck of the recovery ship here. And so as we wait for the Navy and NASA personnel to get their assessment of the crew inside of Orion, why don't we toss it back to Rob for an update?
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Rick Henfling and the entry team of flight controllers still on duty. The vehicle has been powered down for some time now. There are no hazardous gases emanating from Integrity. That, of course, allowed the recovery personnel to approach the vehicle and then open the hatch to begin the initial medical assessment of the crew, as you just indicated. Now we're standing by for the erection of that inflatable raft, the front porch, alongside of the vehicle that will enable the crew to be extracted one by one onto the raft, have a moment or two to get their land legs back before they're hoisted into two hovering Navy helicopters, 2 crew members for each helicopter, for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. All of Integrity's systems operated flawlessly throughout the course of the approach to the Earth, the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of the key milestones that followed in this high-speed return to Earth for Integrity, a mission that spanned more than 694,000 miles from the vehicle's launch from the Kennedy Space Center atop the Space Launch System back on April 1st. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the last time that the Apollo program saw a splashdown in the Pacific was Apollo 17 back on December 19th, 1972. So for the first time in some 53 and a half years, we have reenacted that with the arrival of Integrity's astronauts as they flew around the moon in that historic lunar flyby that began with a trans-lunar injection burn that took them out of Earth orbit following 24 hours of a high Earth orbit trajectory. The high Earth orbit trajectory enabled flight controllers here to have a full 24 hours to evaluate the systems on Integrity and the condition of the crew before they would commit to flying to the moon. With the side hatch of Orion having been opened to set the stage for the erection of the inflatable life raft, known as the front porch, to be erected alongside the spacecraft for the extraction of the crew. Let's play for you an interview that my colleague Megan Cruz conducted on the USS John P. Murtha with Navy diver First Class David McMahon that explains how this process is unfolding.
Okay, Davey, so you and some of your team, one last look over of the stabilization collar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is this stabilization collar?
This is what's going to stabilize the capsule out there in the ocean. We don't know how good the weather or the waves will be that day, so this will help prevent any unnecessary occurrences from happening, stabilizing the capsule and the astronauts inside.
So basically this is a float that will go around Orion. I'm assuming that what they're doing right now, these are the lines that will attach the collar onto Orion?
That is correct.
And so what are they doing here?
So we've got the lower line that will secure the inflation device before we inflate it. That gives us the go-ahead that it's secure in its space, and then we'll inflate it. And then once that is done, we'll undo all the carabiners and get this orange line on top tied in the same fashion. And then this will be secured to the capsule, and the astronauts can safely take their first steps out of the capsule onto the front porch.
Okay, and how long will it take them to set up the stabilization collar?
We should definitely be able to handle this in under 10 minutes.
Okay, wow. And then you just mentioned the front porch. So basically after they set up this stabilization collar, then they set up what's called the front porch here.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the front porch?
Front porch is basically a bigger waiting room for the astronauts to sit in while we wait for the helicopters to show up and grab them.
Okay, so the medical team that was inside with the crew, they're going to help them out and onto the front porch?
That is correct.
And then what happens here?
We have higher trained medical personnel also on board the front porch that will give them lookovers and just make sure they're okay while we wait for the helicopters to show up.
Okay. How does it feel, I mean, your team, you, to be part of a mission that's returning astronauts from the moon in more than 50 years?
We all feel extremely honored to be a part of this, as well as a bigger mission for the Navy and joining up with NASA to do great things.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you and your team are ready?
Yes, very ready.
Cool. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, the recovery operations are continuing out in the Pacific. We shortly should see that life raft, the front porch, erected alongside the side hatch of the vehicle. A number of flight controllers have come into the flight control room to receive congratulations from Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling. But we're going to stick with our operations out in the Pacific as we await the extraction of the 4 crew members who are reported to be in excellent condition. Again, while we stand by for that front porch to be erected alongside of the side hatch of the vehicle, let's go back to the USS John P. Murtha and Megan Cruz. Megan?
Hey, Rob. Pausing now to listen to some internal audio loops. Again, the operations team here on the ship communicating with everyone out on the water. It seems like currents are hindering them a little bit from unfurling and inflating the stabilization collar as well as the front porch. But again, the requirement to get the crew out within 2 hours of splashdown, plenty of time. So no concerns just yet. But as calm as the water looks, yeah, it looks like it's hindering the teams just a tad. You can see in some of our shots that side hatch still open. Again, inside there are now 8 people inside. 4 divers, Navy divers, all with medical training, each assigned to an astronaut each. Making sure that they're comfortable, feeling good. As you've heard us say in the broadcast, you know, they expect a little bit of discomfort. Again, these astronauts just traveled back to Earth at 25,000 miles an hour, a nearly 695,000-mile journey around the moon. If you think you get carsick. Again, 6 boats out there, lots of gear with them, just in case, right? As we said, the crew reported feeling great, but again, all those folks out there in case they weren't, right? NASA is all about making sure we think about every situation that can happen, and so, of course, wanted to be ready in case any of our astronauts needed more medical attention while out there in the water. You see now teams, again, trying to set up the stabilization collar and front porch for the crew to get out of Orion. They need both, right? The stabilization collar will keep Orion from swaying as you see it is doing now. And then they will connect the front porch to the stabilization collar so that the crew can take 2 steps and they will be in the front porch. Not a lot of chatter on the mission audio loops. That's a good thing. Again, things proceeding pretty nominally, even if they're fighting some currents out there on the Pacific Ocean. Again, the goal, setting up the stabilization collar and the front porch so that the crew can rest comfortably in the front porch, get placed into harnesses so that 2 helicopters can lift them off the front porch and onto the USS John Murtha here. The helicopters are going to take turns picking up an astronaut. So again, Helo 1 and Helo 2. Okay, and the recovery team here on the ship just got a report from the undersea medical officer who is inside the capsule with the crew. He is reporting all 4 members are green. All of our 4 astronauts, Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, green, meaning they are feeling great, not the complexion of their skin. They are feeling great, happy to be home, and ready to be extracted as soon as possible. And so, as I was saying, we have 2 helicopters circling the activity you're seeing on the water right now. Each will take turns picking up an astronaut. So Helo 1 will come on in, hover above the front porch, about 40 feet above the front porch. A Navy recovery specialist will be hoisted down into the front porch.
The restricted maneuvering doctrine is in effect.
Will connect to the first astronaut, which we're expecting to be Christina. And then Helo 2 comes around, picks up Jeremy, while Helo 1 stays above head, and then Helo 1 will come back in for another astronaut, and then Helo 2 for the last astronaut, and then back to the flight deck here on the recovery ship. I was talking to Assistant Artemis Recovery Director Paul Sierpinski. He said helos are a much quicker, safer way to get on board. They did actually consider boats, but then if you think about it, longer time, the crew would have to move through more of the ship. This way the helos will give a more direct, quicker route to the medical bay for our 4 astronauts. Beautiful shots from our aerial and imagery teams. Clouds have dissipated for a clear view from the bow of the recovery ship here. You can still see divers in the water there. Encircling Orion, that is that stabilization collar we've been telling you about. As you saw in that interview just a few minutes ago, they have to first connect it to Orion, and then once it's secured onto Orion, they can inflate it, and then they'll further secure it with other harnesses and lines. About an hour and 10 minutes since splashdown in the Pacific Ocean here. Reed, Victor, Christina, and Jeremy back home after a history-making mission to the moon and back. If you missed what we said just a couple of minutes ago, the undersea medical officer inside with the crew in Orion reporting all 4 crew members feeling great. Progress being made there on the stabilization collar. It looks like they are beginning to inflate it. And it looks like they're starting to unfold the front porch in order to get that into the water here shortly and inflate that as well. Again, more than 40 people out in the water right now. And those Navy and NASA personnel have been in the water for now about 4 hours. The reason why they had to get out so early is just to stage everything. And actually here on the ship, when there are flight operations happening, you can't have anything else, right? Just because the flight deck can be a dangerous place, so they just want to focus on planes coming and going from the ship, so that's why they wanted to get the boats in the water to make sure that they have all the time they needed for the flight ops. And then the same crew here out in the water, they will stay out in the water for a number of hours after we recover the crew and get them back on the ship, because then they have to recover Orion. All right, that stabilization collar looking good around Orion. We're now seeing some recovery personnel getting on to that collar. Again, they need to further attach it to Orion to make sure that it can really prop up the spacecraft. It's basically lifting it up off of the water just a tad. Again, so it's not so so it doesn't sway so much in the water there. And now that front porch looks like it's nearly fully inflated as well. You can see a much larger surface area. And so once the crew get out of Orion, they can stretch their legs a little bit on this front porch, get some fresh air. And enjoy this beautiful day here on their home planet. It appears teams now are about to connect the front porch to the stabilization collar. And at that point, when both are secure, we should soon see astronauts come out of Orion. All these views you see also being fed to the Landing Force Operations Center here on the ship. Of course, it is very important for our recovery teams leading the mission to have all the views that you're seeing as well. Again, listening to their communication loop here on the ship. Very quiet, which is a good thing. It means things are going pretty nominally, meaning as expected. Again, all this activity happening just 3,000 yards away from the ship. So that means this will be a very quick flight back on the helicopters for the crew. 2-3 minutes, and then they'll be back here on the ship.
I know.
Okay, saw a thumbs up from one of the personnel on the front porch. It looks like they are now getting ready to deploy what they call the Air Rescue Vest, ARV. And so this is the harness that each crew member will get into in order to be hoisted into the helicopters. Again, those helicopters hovering just about 40 feet above the front porch when they're ready to pick up each crew member.
This is Mission Control Houston. Behind me, a fairly raucous scene as hundreds of flight controllers have poured into the flight control room here. This is reminiscent of the scene after the final shuttle mission of STS-135, although that was the end of a program. This is only the beginning of a program with the textbook splashdown of Integrity and its 4 astronauts. We're standing by for the crew to be extracted from the spacecraft. Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling invited all of these flight controllers who have contributed to this mission to enter the flight control room, to have an opportunity to receive well wishes and to share the mutual glow that exists in the wake of a textbook mission for Integrity. On the front screen here in Mission Control, a sign that says, "Welcome home, Integrity, taking humanity back to the moon, going further, and returning safely to Earth." So all of that jubilation, part of the post-splashdown activities, even as we await the crew being extracted from the vehicle to be hoisted onto Navy helicopters for the trip back to the USS John P. Murtha. Once again here in Mission Control, this view of the Artemis Flight Control Room, known as the White Flight Control Room. This is the old shuttle flight control room, and now is the home of Artemis missions to the moon and beyond. Once again, quite a few flight controllers were invited in by Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling to share in the jubilation following the successful splashdown of Integrity. That splashdown occurring an hour and 22 minutes ago, as we stand by for the completion of the extraction of the crew, and ultimately their hoisting onto Navy helicopters for a short flight back to the USS John P. Murtha. Splashdown occurred at 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. I had an opportunity to talk to the head of flight dynamics, Jeff Birch, a moment or two ago. He said the trajectory of Integrity coming through the Earth's atmosphere was so precise, they've never seen anything line up on a ground track like today's entry by Integrity for its splashdown southwest of San Diego. And the initial, you can hear it. Jubilation here in the flight control room. The first crew member is out of Integrity. We are expecting the other crew members momentarily to be extracted. We now have 2 crew members out. Two crew members out, 2 to go. We're about 1 hour from sunset out in the Pacific. Everything continues to go well. Integrity's systems function perfectly during its entry back to Earth. And Reed Wiseman, the commander who will be last out of the vehicle, reported that all the crew members were feeling very well. Crew member number 3 now out. And now standing by for the commander, Reed Wiseman, who will be last out of his ship. Bobbing in the Pacific under almost ideal conditions, Integrity spanned 694,000 miles during its journey from launch to splashdown. And we now have Reed Wiseman out of the vehicle. All 4 crew members now out of Integrity. Once again, all 4 crew members now on the front porch, and the procedure to begin hoisting them up to these 2 Navy helicopters hovering overhead will begin shortly. This is Mission Control Houston. The mission is over, but the melody lingers on as jubilation continues here in the flight control room. We should be expecting NASA's Associate Administrator, Amit Kshatriya, to be joining us shortly for a short interview while the recovery operations continue out in the Pacific. So we'll stand by for that. And then we'll turn it back over to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha. This is Mission Control Houston here in the Artemis Flight Control Room. A number of flight controllers basking in the glory of the successful end of this mission that carried 4 astronauts around the moon on a lunar flyby, and the first test flight of Orion with crew members on board. Splashdown occurring an hour and 32 minutes ago after a flawless descent back into the Earth's atmosphere for the vehicle. Its 4 crew members in good shape, simply enjoying their time right now on the front porch, as it were, the inflatable raft alongside of their Integrity spacecraft. We're expecting Amit Kshatriya, the NASA Associate Administrator, to join us here momentarily for a brief interview before we turn it back over to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha, the recovery ship. This is Mission Control Houston. We're about an hour and 34 minutes since the textbook splashdown of integrity in the Pacific to bring home our astronauts. And with us now is Amit Kshatriya, the NASA Associate Administrator. Amit, a little bit of history made tonight, a little bit of history made over the past few weeks. Your thoughts as this team here basks in the glow of what they just accomplished?
Yeah, Rob, we're here in the control center, and it's kind of overrun with jubilant folks in the Mission Control Houston, as well as engineering, and folks that just want to be here, part of it, as we watch our crew get extracted from the vehicle. And, you know, my thought is always, always, always about these teams, the team that's in the water right now, pulling the crew out, the team here in Houston that worked so hard over the last 10 days, no sleep to get this done. You know, we still have some work to do to get the crew to the med bay here on the ship. They all look great coming out, so hopefully that won't be too long. You know, I think we saw the administrator on the boat too, giving his thanks to the Navy team on the Mirtha, which they're just an incredible group of sailors. I was able to visit with them a couple weeks ago. And then if you pull it all the way back to the workers and the folks that joined the rocket at Michoud, that made the heat shield tiles that held together tonight, that stacked the vehicle in Florida, that integrated the vehicle in Denver, that fired the engines in Stennis, that fired the boosters in Promontory. I mean, this is the entire team, coming together and being tested by the environment that this machine went through. And they did it right. The work was good. They did it right.
You've said in a number of briefings, of course, and in other forums that this is just the first step. The cadence has to step up, as the administrator has indicated. Now, it's a little early for the full report card on how integrity did, but did this mission ultimately, from your eyes view, exceed expectations?
It absolutely did. I mean, I was waiting to talk about this until we were in the water, and, I think we still have, again, work to do to bring it in and really kind of go through it bolt by bolt and see what we learned. But, I mean, so far, given what we learned during the mission and given how we performed on ascent, on entry, I always think about energy in terms of the states that you worry about the most, and every time we put these machines through these incredibly energetic states that came through. So I'm fairly confident that we made a big step tonight to get us on the path towards the surface. I think the path to the surface is open now. We do have to do all the work, and we'll make sure we talk about that as cleanly as we can. We learned a few things during the mission, but I have to tell you, this was an incredible test of an incredible machine.
From an American psyche standpoint, the Empire State Building was lit up red, white, and blue tonight. Our coverage was seen on baseball stadiums around the major leagues. How captivating was this experience for the American people, for the world, in fact, as we returned to the moon? I have not been able to watch a lot of the coverage as we've progressed through the mission. I will tell you, just, from my witness in Florida before launch, and then seeing the people's faces here, and then reading where I can about how things are going. I think this has been a gift to the world from NASA. NASA has given the world a gift, proving to folks all over the place, especially young people, and that to me is what this is really about. Young people, when they see what we can do when we work together, when we have teams that collaborate, that it doesn't matter how hard the problems are, we can solve them. I'm hopeful that Artemis II, as folks witness what we were able to do with this incredible crew, this incredible team that we've birthed into the world, scientists and engineers and artists that have been inspired by this. And even if they don't come work in the program, which separately they should come work in the program because Lord knows we need the help, but even if they don't want to come work in the program, hopefully they grow up to recognize they can do amazing things when they work together and contribute to society and be good citizens and really change the way, the challenges that are coming in the world are overcomable if we work together like this. And one final question. Flying to the moon, we did it. We've done it again this past week and a half or so. But the engineering that went behind the design of this mission and the precision, the pinpoint precision of this vehicle entering that entry corridor, it's almost mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is incredible when you think about the energies involved and the uncertainties involved. That when we inserted the vehicle into orbit, it was 99.2% down the middle. When we dropped the vehicle right on top of the fleet here, our guys knew exactly where to go, but the guidance was perfect. You know, and it's interesting. I've got this question a lot over the last few weeks about, you know, we did this before 53 years ago, and you know that. I think, I mean, it is a reasonable thing to contemplate, like what's gone on since then. And what I'd tell you is, you know, when we did Apollo, which again, the more we learn about what they did, the more magical it seems what they were able to accomplish given the technology and the learnings that they had. But when we did Apollo, the architects of Apollo, you know, Gilbert, Seaman, von Braun, Mueller, what they really wanted to do, you know, as they were contemplating what it meant to expand our range of action to the lunar surface, what they wanted to do was learn how to live and work in space for a long time. They wanted to do that first before they were confident they could expand their range of action to the moon. Now, of course, the politics of the time and the mission at the time was different, and so they had to go straight to the moon and bring people home. And then after that, the program kind of lost its momentum. But you know, after that, NASA kept moving along those paths, right? So we recognized during Apollo that reusability was going to be important. We spent a lot of money on those machines, and you know, we spent a lot of money on these machines here. Even though, but we recognized that reusability was important, which is why we built a winged space plane called Space Shuttle, and then we used that reusable machine to build a space station. And we learned for 25 years how to live and work in space, and have been able to develop technologies that can enable exploration. So really, what I think is now, 53 years later, we're at the point where the architects of Apollo would have been pleased that we're now ready to actually go back to the moon and go back to stay, because we've learned all the things we needed to learn.
There's a lot of people pleased here tonight, and we really thank you for joining us. Amit Kshatriya, NASA's Associate Administrator, as we begin to hoist the crew onto the helicopters to head back to the recovery ship. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Amit. This is Mission Control Houston, with the crew members now beginning to be hoisted aboard the Navy helicopters. Let's go to Megan Cruz aboard the USS John P. Murtha, who will take it from here.
Hey, Rob. Yeah, back on the bow of the ship here, we are seeing the helicopters circling Orion. The first one there, having just completed picking up the first astronaut. Helo 2 now, hovering just 40 feet above the front porch, lowering a recovery specialist out of the helicopter. That person will touch down in the front porch just there. The crew members already outfitted with a harness that will allow them to quickly attach to the hoisting device. Look at the power of those blades throwing water out at the center there, the front porch, with now 3 astronauts and the recovery specialists. Again, crews already outfitted with a harness vest. And here we go. Second astronaut now off the front porch, getting hoisted into the second helicopter. That helicopter will now hover just a distance away to give room for the first helicopter to come back and pick up the third astronaut. As we wait for that helicopter to come back, make its way back around, just want to mention that the President of the United States called our NASA administrator today while he was on the ship, just minutes after we interviewed him live on our coverage, and congratulated him and NASA on this history-making moment tonight. Helicopter 1 again hovering 40 feet over the front porch. We will soon see another recovery specialist getting lowered onto the front porch. Wow, imagine sitting on that front porch, the wind, the water. But again, the recovery team determined that a helicopter flight back to the ship here would be safer, faster, and more comfortable for our crew who just completed a 10-day mission around the moon. Third astronaut in the air, getting hoisted quickly back into the first helicopter now. That first helicopter now on its way back to the ship here. We will soon see it land in just a few minutes. Again, all this action happening just 3,000 yards away from us, so a very quick flight back to the flight deck. And now the only person left on the front porch, Commander Reed Wiseman. That second helicopter now making its way back over to the front porch. Here it comes. Making its final approach here. The last astronaut, Commander Reed Wiseman, now off the front porch and almost into the second helicopter. Both now on their way back to the ship where we are, the USS John P. Murtha, just west of San Diego in the Pacific Ocean. Exciting to see our 4 crew members minutes away from landing on the flight deck here on the recovery ship. 550 people on this ship, excited, ready, anxious, looking forward to welcoming this crew aboard. Watching them now with our own eyes. Close to the ship here. Hearing them begin to hover on the flight deck, which is just across from us, here on the bow. The first helicopter coming in. Wheels down. Wheels down of the first helicopter carrying 2 of our Artemis II crew. Pilot Victor Glover and mission specialist Christina Cook. Helo 1 on deck reported on the recovery loop. Again, the mission audio loops that the recovery team are using here to communicate with one another. And an announcement just made on the ship, integrity incoming. 2 more helicopters on their way to the flight deck, one carrying the crew, the other, one of our imagery helicopters. Again, kudos to our imagery and aerial teams for giving us these beautiful views of history in the making. Set amid a gorgeous, soon-to-be sunset here in the Pacific Ocean. Second helicopter making its approach of the flight deck. Plenty of people here on the bow with their cell phones out, filming this moment. Some impressive flying here by the Navy, as we are seconds away from wheels down. And there you go. We now have all 4 Artemis II crew members on the USS John P. Murtha. I'm sure they're happy to be out of the water and on this recovery ship with, again, 550 people on board, ready to welcome them home. But first, as we've been saying throughout the broadcast, just making sure the crew feel good. We reported that they were feeling good when they were in Orion, but those were just initial, quick, verbal assessments of how they're feeling. Their destination tonight, the medical bay here on the ship, right after we power down the helicopters here. The team on the flight deck working quickly but methodically. Waiting for just one more helicopter to touch down. Very limited personnel here on the flight deck.
Restricted maneuver doctrine is in effect.
As that third helicopter touches down.
The ship is at flight quarters. Stand clear of weather decks, ACO frame 095, burn no cover topside, thrown articles over the side, hold all trash and garbage on station. Flight quarters.
While just a few folks on the flight deck itself, there are plenty more on some upper decks. I see in some of our views a very packed crowd overhead. Announcements being made over the ship's loudspeaker system, reminding folks to stay clear of operational areas like the flight deck, so that teams can work quickly to get the crew off of the helicopters and into the medical bay. Splashdown today, 5:06 p.m. Pacific time. We are within 2 hours of that splashdown time, and already we have all 4 crew members on the flight deck of the USS John P. Murtha. Again, crew waiting before getting out for the helicopters to completely shut down. Safety, of course, very important to NASA and the U.S. military. So we'll wait just a couple of minutes here before we start seeing crew members walk off the helicopters one by one. All right, and now here we see pilot Victor Glover and mission specialist Christina Cook sitting on the edge of one of the helicopters, looking in great spirits. That familiar smile and laugh from Victor, I can see it from here. Christina, I'm sure, feeling the same way, just blocked a little bit by our camera here, but we'll see her here shortly. A photographer taking their pictures. Victor saluting folks on the flight deck. They look like they're in great spirits. Happy to be home, I'm sure. If you're sitting at home, I hope you too are wondering, what would you want to ask them if you got a chance to talk to them? Because that is what I'm thinking about. Getting the opportunity to talk to or ask questions of these 4 astronauts who just made history as the first crew to return to the moon since 1972. Oh, there we see Christina there, also smiling. Finally peering out, waving at the cameras. Hello to you too, Christina, yes. Welcome back. Welcome, welcome home. A loudspeaker announcement on the ship saying, "Welcome home, Integrity." Victor in great spirits. I can't see who he's talking to, but I kind of think that he might be talking to his other 2 crew members. Shouting from across the flight deck, congratulations to one another. And so now we see some Navy personnel walking up to the helicopter. This is again the first helicopter carrying pilot Victor Glover and mission specialist Christina Cook. Both have taken off their helmets now. Some pictures, video to catalog this historic moment. A beautiful sunset just behind them here in the Pacific Ocean. Golden hour. These pictures will be beautiful. Now we see NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman. He is on the flight deck, as well as Flight Surgeon Rick Schuring walking over to Victor and Christina first. We saw the administrator walk over to the other helicopter, which is carrying Commander Reed Weissman and Mission Specialist Jeremy Hansen. We heard from Rick earlier in the broadcast. Again, he said he's going to be out there on the flight deck to do another initial assessment of the crew, ask them how they're feeling, anything bothering them. But again, from what I'm seeing, they look like they're in great spirits and feeling pretty good for folks who just traveled 695,000 miles from Florida to the moon and now here to the Pacific Ocean. We're now seeing NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman walking across the flight deck. He had been talking to Reed and Jeremy, now approaching Victor and Christina. A hug from Victor, a hug from Christina. What a moment that we're getting to experience together. I'm sure congratulatory words. You know, we got to speak to the administrator live on this broadcast as well, and he said the kid in him right now, giddy, absolutely giddy at what we were able to accomplish today. Returning them home safely and in good spirits after a 10-day mission around the moon. And here we go. We're seeing Jeremy walking, waving across the flight deck, now on his way to the medical bay. It's a short walk, less than a minute. Again, that's why the recovery team decided to use helicopters to get them on the flight deck for that short walk to medical bay. And now on the flight deck, we see the chief of the astronaut office, Scott Tingle. Rick Schuring switching places. He's going over to the other helicopter. Big hugs from Victor, Christina to Scott. Again, a gorgeous sunset setting the stage for this recovery tonight. Right. And now here we are, Christina, making her way, looking thankful, grateful, happy to be home. You can see she's looking up again. Lots of people, just a few levels up off the flight deck, welcoming her home. Scott holding the door like a gentleman, but back on his way to the other crew still on the flight deck. So still on the flight deck, Victor Glover and Reed Weissman. It looks like Victor will be the next one headed to medical bay. More hugs, more hugs. He's a hugger. Victor looking good as he walks across the flight deck. NASA Administrator applauding. Victor applauding for all the folks on the ship with him who played a role in their safe return today. And finally, just one Artemis II crew member left on the flight deck, Commander Reed Weissman. Applause from the group there on the flight deck, I'm sure, as well as on the level just above them, packed with people. Reed looking good as he takes his steps towards the medical bay. See our 4 Artemis II crew members back on the ship. Again, now they will head into medical bay, where they will be assessed by flight surgeons from both NASA as well as the Canadian Space Agency. A more in-depth assessment. When they get to medical bay, they will each have their own nurse. They will be helped out of their suits. And then again, we'll check to see that they're feeling good. Make sure it's not just adrenaline, but that they are feeling good from their long journey back from the moon. Beautiful shot of that sunset, illuminating our flight deck. And now with our astronauts safely on board, I want to welcome on Artemis Recovery Director Lily Villarreal. Lily, I don't know how you must be feeling right now. Ecstatic, relieved?
So ecstatic, relieved. Of course, we still have to bring the capsule into the well deck of the ship, but this is a major milestone to have the crew here on the ship and in med bay. You know, our team has been preparing and working really hard, and I'm just so proud of them all. Everything went very well, just as planned. Our teammates in Houston, the flight control team was just amazing. We were able to have great conversations and communications about everything. And I don't know what else to say. I'm just so ecstatic. It's such a wonderful feeling to get to this point. Again, we still have to get the capsule, but this is huge for all of us in landing recovery, and I couldn't do this without my team, and of course the full support of the U.S. military. There's going to be lots of, you know, high fives when we get the capsule back in, and I'm so happy that the crew's doing well, Ryan's doing well, and you know, thank you for, you know, for everybody watching.
Yeah, it was great to watch the crew come back to the ship with you. How were you feeling when you were seeing them looking so happy to be home and feeling really good?
You know, the funny thing is that we had video of them from inside the Orion vehicle. They were like that from the beginning. When we opened the hatch, they were already out of their seats, having a good time, waiting for us to open the hatch. And they opened the hatch, and of course we did the first medical assessment. Everybody was doing very well, and they were just having such a great time with the medical team that was inside the capsule. I think they were all taking selfies with you know, the phones that they have, probably talking about what they saw, and it was just smiles all around. They were having such a great time. And then we put them on the front porch when we were ready to put them on the front porch. And again, you could see they were just so ecstatic to be home and talking to everybody. So we were very happy to see all of that in the control room of the LFOC.
How remarkable is that? Again, if we think about their journey, the 695,000-mile journey around the moon and back, coming back at 30 times faster than the speed of sound. I mean, how remarkable is that they are in such good spirits?
I mean, this is an amazing crew. I think you guys have seen it for the past 10 days. They're wonderful people, and we're so happy that they brought us along on that ride. And I can't wait to see all the additional videos and pictures that they have that, you know, we'll get a hold of now that they're back on the ground. And I can't wait to hear how, you know, a little more than what we saw on the press briefings from the crew about what they saw. it's just fantastic. You know, some of my favorite people around this 10 days was a science team and how excited they were. And so this is exactly how we feel in the landing recovery team when the science team went, oh my goodness, when they heard all the discussions about the moon. This is exactly how we feel now in the landing recovery team. We're so ecstatic. Yeah. Again, we have to recover the capsule. I want to make sure we don't forget about our Orion.
Lily's all about business. She's thinking about what's next. But yeah, speaking of these 10 days, I mean, we have been along for the journey with them, live with them 24/7 for 10 days, and just really seeing the engagement that we've gotten from around the world. What do you hope people take away from this mission?
I think that's fantastic. So, you know, my story was that I went to the Kennedy Space Center. I was born in Colombia. I was 10 years old when we moved to the United States, but when I was 7, my family took me to the visitor center, and that's when I learned about Apollo. And we went to the moon, and I learned about astronauts, and that story was what really fueled me to want to do STEM and want to be an astronaut. And I think that this Artemis program is going to do exactly what, what girls, my age back then is 7, young people right now, girls and even like young men, obviously. But we want to empower people to know that you can do this, right? If you want to come and work for NASA, if I did it, they can do it. And Artemis program is just going to inspire everybody. And I'm so happy about that. Yeah. Like Apollo inspired me.
Thank you so much, Lily. Really appreciate you being here. As you said, still a lot of work to do. 5 to 6 more hours to recover Orion that's still out in the water. So I'll let you get back to it.
Thank you.
You had beautiful words to say again. We hope that this inspires people. We hope that you come and join us at NASA and accomplish great things with us in the future. Yeah. Back to you, Rob.
Thank you, Megan, and safe sailing out there in the Pacific. Here in Mission Control, it is now all quiet. The team of flight controllers and all their support personnel have left the room to enjoy the aftermath of a textbook touchdown by Integrity that splashed down in the Pacific right on target to complete this historic flyby of the moon, the Artemis II mission. With that, we'll wrap up our coverage for the night and point you to a post-splashdown news conference in 15 minutes at 9:35 p.m. Central Time, 10:35 p.m. Eastern Time, where managers will discuss the return of the Integrity spacecraft and the completion of the Artemis II mission. With that, we'll wrap up our coverage for this evening and historic mission in the history books. This is Mission Control Houston. Main chute deploy. And we have 3 good main chutes.
Houston Integrity, splashdown, sending post-landing command now.
Splashdown confirmed.
Copy splashdown, waiting on VLDR.
Splashdown confirmed at 7:07 p.m. Central Time, 5:07 p.m. Pacific Time.